Okay, I think we are ready. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, board members. Good morning, members of the press. Buenos días a todos. Vamos a dar comienzo a la conferencia de prensa. Recuerden que la misma está siendo grabada. This press conference is being recorded. If you have any question, you can raise your hand or write it in the chat box. Pueden levantar la mano en el botón o escribirla en la cajita de preguntas. Vamos a dar comienzo a la conferencia de prensa. We're going to start. First question. So, any member of the press has a question right now? ¿Alguna pregunta?
Sí.
Joanisabel, go ahead.
Buenos días. Espero que se encuentren bien. I do have a couple of questions. The first one has to do with municipalities. I would like, if it's visible, if you can walk through the numbers, because basically they asked to keep the fondo de equiparación. Now you say that you're giving them additional funds. I'm sorry. And I'm just kind of confused. Basically, Gino said that there's the risk of municipalities shutting down. It's minimum. It's minimal. And I would like to get some color to see specifically how much money municipalities received last year, how much they're going to receive this year through the Fondo de Equiparación, and then how much money they're going to be receiving through these other initiatives to mitigate inflation and so on.
Yes, I think this is a question for Germán Ojeda. Please go ahead. In order. All right.
Sure, thank you. So, Joanisabel, municipalities will be getting from the general fund $308 million. It includes $44 million from the equalization fund, $58 million for the waste fund, pursuant to Act 53. $40 million as a one-time economic support. The cost sharing for this fiscal year of $22 million, and the municipal administration fund of $144 million.
And how
so
much?
That's $308 million.
So, but how much they received last year?
How much they received last year?
Yes.
They received, hold on, $50 million. Hold on, I can give you that number.
I would like to make sure that this is properly discussed. It's very confusing because we're totally aware that the equalization fund is not expected to end until next fiscal year. So
yes, Joanisabel, so as compared to last year, municipalities are getting $54 million, excuse me, $54 million more than the FY22 budget.
Okay. The second question that I have has to do with the confirmation process of the budget. Now that the board basically approved the budget and certify it, there are doubts in terms of if this budget would be the second one when we are talking about the requirement of forward balanced budgets as part of the board's mandate. Can you explain us what's the view of the board in this matter? Because it's my understanding that boards must be prepared based on the accrual accounting method. However, the last budget, once it was amended to reflect the restructuring, we understood that it would qualify as a balanced budget, although it wasn't prepared under this methodology. I would like to know or to understand how the board is viewing this and what will happen with the other side of Section 209, which is precisely count for balanced budgets under the accrual accounting method.
I can, so I'll say a couple of words about that. And the key takeaway is it's possible that this will be the second balanced budget and that the last budget was the first balanced budget. We won't and can't know until we have audited financials. And so until the financials are audited, and as you know, we're just through 2018 at this point, we won't be able to say whether we have a balanced budget or not. So at this point, we have to say it could be the second balanced budget. We hope it is, but we have to wait for the audited financials.
Regardless, this budget was approved and certified by the board.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, pardon for my voice. Regardless, this budget was approved and certified by the board.
Yes, it was. And it is a balanced budget. But as I said, until we have the audited financials, it can't qualify as one of the four, but it potentially could be the second in a row.
Okay. Thinking about House Bill 1367 and the certification process, what was the reasoning behind? We don't have House Bill 1367 passed. So I would assume that if you don't have that bill passed into law, basically you won't have entire certainty about such an important source of revenue for the general fund. So how did you manage that part of the equation?
I think that's Janorli or Herman. Is that?
If I may, yeah, I may say something here. Buenos días, Joanisabel.
Buenos días.
The budget that was just certified was prepared in accordance with the certified fiscal plan and the revenue projections therein. The fiscal plan, the certified fiscal plan contains or maintains certain revenue expectations with regards to the companies that contribute through the Act 154 excise tax. The legislation that was approved and, as I understand, signed by the governor yesterday is currently under review. Now, following the processes of PROMESA, the government has to submit certification under Section 204 of PROMESA as to its compliance or consistency with both PROMESA and the fiscal plan. Once we receive that, we will review. As I mentioned, we are currently doing that review process and communicating with the Department of Treasury or Hacienda to make sure that we have the right figures, and we will just continue the process under Section 204 of PROMESA.
Thank you. I do have another question, but I don't want to overtake everything. One has to do with PRASA and other things of the most recent decisions from the board. But I would like to leave the opportunity to other colleagues if they want.
Okay. We will follow up. Thank you, Joanny. I think next question I have Osman that right in the chat. Osman, you can go.
Okay. Greetings to all. I have a follow-up question with the municipalities, and please bear with that. That was a truckload of numbers and information, so we might be confused in some parts. So please, my question is regarding the issue of whether this budget includes the coverage of medical plans for the employees of the municipalities. That has been one of the main controversies and one of the main claims from the mayors, that they need that money to be included. Is that part of the numbers that you just gave us? That's one question.
Thank you, Oscar. So there is a relief to the municipalities for the contribution that they need to pay ASEM as part of the healthcare of the Plan Vital, and it's in the amount of $41 million.
Okay, and then I have a question regarding if I heard correctly, that was the money set aside for consolidations. It's the money from previous years added, and it's now 66 million, but it's just sitting there. It has not been used. What is the situation with this money, and why is it not being used at all? If someone can clarify me about that.
From prior years, the monies that are available are $44 million, plus the appropriation included in this year's budget of 22. It's a total of $66 million that the municipalities have available upon, the implementation of some of the initiatives that are included. And Herman, if you want to add anything related to those municipalities.
Sure. Thank you, Ginorli. The use of these funds is subject to certain guidelines, processes, and requirements by the municipalities. Those guidelines were developed collaboratively between AFAF and the Oversight Board. And we understand that the mayors have expressed some concerns as to the strict nature or requirements of these guidelines. So as we discussed in the meeting that we held a couple of weeks ago, we requested the mayors to submit some proposals on how to make these guidelines more user-friendly, so that the monies are used. As you mentioned, these monies up until now have not been claimed or requested by any municipality, so we're trying to make them as available as possible to the mayors, so they can be used. There's no sense in the money not being used. And one thing I would like to add to the first part of the question with regards to the assess relief granted to the municipalities, as Ginorli mentioned, up until now on this budget is $41 million for FY23. But that number may go up depending on federal legislation, which is the same situation we had during FY22 last year, where the FMAP contribution ended up being something more like $90 million. Okay, thank you.
And just one quick follow-up question again. Is there a expected, more or less, the date on which we could know if if the budget is in effect the second consecutive balance one that's a requirement of PROMESA, or is there an expected date on that?
It really depends on when we get the audited financials. So the governor and the Treasury Department are trying to get them out as quickly as possible, but we're only up to 2018 at this point, and so we'll be waiting for the audited financials, and we don't know the exact date.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify something, we're up to the FY 2019 financials. Okay.
Oh, so we're through. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Herman.
All right.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Osman. The order of question will be Luis, then Oscar, then John Marino. Luis, you can go ahead.
Yes, hi. I do have just a couple of questions. Some of the lawmakers involved in the budget process said that the lack of an executive director and the absence of Natalie Yaresco in the process affected the communication between their legislative staff and members of the board, and could have delayed the discussion of the budget. Was this something that I just want a reaction from you guys on this, and an update on the process of hiring the new executive director of the board?
Sure.
That's
so starting with the first question, not having a new executive director, in my view, did not affect the process at all. Our staff was in continuous contact with the governor and with the House and with the Senate, is currently in continuous contact with them. A number of board members have been in contact with them. I've been in contact with the legislative leaders. We have had lots of contact. The difficulties in the legislature passing a bill were not because of lack of contact with the FOMB. And now the second half of your question is just where we are in the process. So as you can see, we do not yet have a new executive director in place. We have been looking at candidates. We've interviewed some candidates. We've interviewed some very good candidates. We don't yet have the candidate that we're confident is the one that we're looking for. We're hopeful that will be soon, and we are working hard on that, but we don't have that person quite yet. In the meantime, as you have seen, we have a spectacular staff. We have great advisors, and we are moving full steam ahead.
Okay, and my second question, when you talked about the work plan that is being asked from the government in terms of the federal fund disbursement, the governor made some claims that it was delaying and affecting the flow of federal funds. And you said that it's not a matter of oversight, but rather a transparency provision, asking for that plan. I just want to be clear. Is this a requirement? Is the government required to submit these work plans or not?
It is part of the fiscal plan. So yes, they are required to give us the information that we're asking for. I will repeat, this is not about oversight or interfering. It really, at the end of the day, is trying to encourage them to be as transparent as possible and to be as efficient as possible in getting those federal funds. So we are trying to do everything we can to help that flow of funds onto the island.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Oscar Serrano. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have two questions, at least. One, I would like to know under which section of the PROMESA law do you have the power to approve a budget or a version of the budget before July 1st? You approved one yesterday, and theoretically, the legislature could still have approved one.
I could take a whack at that question, but I don't think I will. I'll see if if we have Tim Mungovan maybe could answer that. But it is in the statute. Section 202 lays out a sequence of back and forth between the oversight board and the governor and the legislature. Actually, Jaime, I see Jaime El Khoury is on. Do you want to say that more precisely?
Okay. So yeah, the precise answer is that Section 202 provides for the board to set out a schedule for the approval of the budget. It is in accordance with that schedule that we set out the dates. The dates were not complied with. Therefore, by June 30th, we, in accordance with that schedule, which was under PROMESA Section 202A, we proceeded to certify the budget. So it's all in, as Chair Skeel mentioned, it's all laid out in Section 202, starting with 202A, which sets out the schedule.
Yeah, but the way it's set out, you could still receive a budget on June 30th, review it and approve it from the legislature.
No, we have to set out a schedule. The schedule was set out, and that schedule was not complied with. Therefore, you have to understand on a practical basis, Gino Orley, of course, can supplement. On a practical basis, the reason for those schedules is quite obvious, which is that we need time, the oversight board needs time to review whatever comes out of the legislature. This is not something that is done as a matter of seconds or minutes. It's a matter that requires quite detailed examination of what comes out. That's the reason why PROMESA Section 202 provides for this schedule, which is what we did. Thank you.
I'm related to that. Thank you. I'm related to that. Balanced budgets that will comply with the law's requirement for the board to cease its affairs don't have to come exclusively from the legislature. It could be balanced budgets approved by the board.
I believe that's correct. I mean, that is what the Section 209 of PROMESA appears to say. I'll just say one more thing, going back to the back and forth with the legislature. We did extend the timeline 4 times, so it's not like we were inflexible, and we had to have a budget in place by yesterday, the end of the fiscal year. So we set out a schedule. It complied with PROMESA. We did not have a proposed budget from the legislature yesterday, so we had to certify what we had. We had to certify our budget.
Okay, and the other area of questioning would be, as part of the disclosure process that was set out by federal law, by the recent federal Congress mandate, it was reported this week how McKinsey, your main advisors, have been also making business with entities related to the government of Puerto Rico, helping them secure contracts with the government. At the same time, they are advising you. It is not the first, by far, it is not the first report that comes out, even official reports, depicting McKinsey's deeply conflicted practices in their business. Do you think you are complying with your fiduciary duty by keeping such a conflicted advisor on board?
Well, that's obviously quite a loaded question. What I will say, Oscar, is under our procedures indicated that there was not a conflict, that McKinsey did not have a conflict. Given the information that we now have, we will take a look at our contract review process, and we will, I'm certain, put in additional safeguards. Let me see if Jaime wants to add anything to that, if you want to give anything more specific about. We have looked into this very, very thoroughly.
Yeah. I mean, the other side of that, Oscar, is that as you correctly pointed out, this has to do with the new disclosure procedures under PROMESA. Those are now being reviewed by the court. Specifically, they're being reviewed. The disclosure that were submitted by the professionals, including McKinsey, are being reviewed by the U.S. trustee. So we also have to, as Chairman Skill mentioned, it's an ongoing process. We also have to see what the conclusions are from that review by the Title III court, specifically by the U.S. trustee. And we will take that into account.
Thank you.
Okay, and Chairman, to clarify, your response is that you will be taking a look at your contract review process to put in additional safeguards, or that you will also be taking a look into the contract you have with McKinsey?
I'm not sure.
It's a question for Jaime. I think.
Yeah, maybe I'll let Jaime handle that. I'm not sure what you're getting at.
No, we're right now taking a look at our processes. Again, as Chairman Skill mentioned, this issue came up in the news reports. We went back and are looking at our internal procedures. So far, they revealed that there was no conflict in accordance with our procedures. But of course, given the new information, if new contracts come up that have to be reviewed, we'll take a look at our procedures. But so far, there's no decision as to the McKinsey contract itself.
Thank you, Jaime. Thank you, Oscar. Next
Thank
question
you.
will be John Marino. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks a lot. I just wanted to ask about the importance of the passage of the PREPA fiscal plan. It was a pretty tortured process. There was a lot of back and forth between the board and PREPA and others. And I also understand that the certification wasn't unanimous. So I don't know if anybody wants to talk about any concerns among the board about the plan and just its importance to the overall effort to reach a restructuring deal.
Yes, I think Jaime can give more information about the voting, and then Alejandro can add more info on the PREPA matter.
Yes, we're going to have the minutes were just approved at this session, so we're going to be making them public, and you will be able to see the actual voting on the PREPA fiscal plan.
Okay, when will I actually be able to see that? I mean, we don't know what the vote is now.
I think they'll be published very shortly.
Okay.
With regards to the certification process, I would say it's not. I don't think that there's concerns or anything in the certified fiscal plan that would be of an issue that we foresee and going forward. I think the incremental steps that we had to take, which made it seem as it was a more complex process than usually, was that this is the first fiscal plan that has LUMA 100% in place, operating the system, the T&D system, and you had PREPA still operating the generation system, right? So that required some additional coordination between the two entities on the development of information, reviewing that information, right? They have to agree on what the load forecast will be so that they can plan accordingly their expenditures and their budgets. So I think there was a bit of growing pains in terms of establishing that relationship and that coordination. I think that's what led to some of the discrepancies that we highlighted in some of our letters when we were extending timelines. But ultimately, where we got was to a fiscal plan that continued the same, has the same objectives and continues the same approach and roadmap towards a transformation. So I think the outcome is precisely what the board has looked for in past fiscal plans. It's just that there was a little bit more nuance in the process to get there, which I think should not be there in future fiscal plans.
I'll just add to that. It's an extraordinarily careful fiscal plan. I am very proud of the fiscal plan, having spent hours in the last, many hours in the last few weeks talking with staff about it, working on it. It's obviously a very important one. PREPA is essential to the island's future, as everyone here knows, and it is, in my view, it's a terrific fiscal plan.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know Joanny has more questions, but anyone else has another question? Okay, Eric De Leon from El Vocero, go ahead.
Greetings to all. I just wanted to know, has the board received a formal certification of estimates on the recently approved amendments to the labor reform laws?
Herman, I think that is a question for you.
We did, thank you. We did receive a certification. It was either yesterday or Thursday. I don't remember, yesterday or Wednesday, sorry, today's Friday. We did receive some certification from AFAF. We're looking into it and reviewing it to make a final determination.
how long do these review processes normally last?
It all depends on the complexity of the issue involved. But be certain we are addressing this particular issue very quickly, taking it very seriously, and we'll deal with it promptly.
Okay, and there's another measure that was recently approved regarding a moratorium on the gas tax for, I believe, less than a month. I believe Hacienda had sent a circular letter for review to the Oversight Board. Has that been reviewed?
See, on that one, I can tell you we have been in communication with the Puerto Rico Department of Treasury or Hacienda, and as a matter of fact, yesterday we received confirmation that the pay for that holiday was received by the Puerto Rico Treasury Department yesterday. The deposit in the amount of $25 million was received. So there is no reason why the holiday cannot now be implemented by the Puerto Rico Treasury Department.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Does anyone has more questions? Johnny, you can go ahead.
Yes, I do have two specific questions about PREP and PRASA. However, I did have a couple of questions regarding McKinsey. I understand what you just said. However, I'm wondering, given since the court might review and might take a decision, I'm wondering if at this moment the board will ask or will consider not to include McKinsey in their contract review. I mean, probably like a stopping that decision or making sure that McKinsey doesn't deal with contract reviews anymore until the final decision is made.
I think that's Jaime again.
Yeah, that's one issue to consider, Joanisabel. We haven't made a categorical decision in that regard, but obviously we have our conflict check procedures in place, and they will be used whenever there's a contract that comes in, and we'll have McKinsey respond to that. But no categorical decision has been made on excluding them totally from contract review.
Thank you. These are my questions regarding PREP and PRASA. The first one has to do precisely with the important amount that PREPA will need to dedicate to buying fuel in this fiscal year. I'm wondering how much money PREPA was able to recover from the adjustments over the past 7 quarters, over the past 6 quarters. Because it seems that if we're getting if PREPA needs so much money, it's more than $3 billion now to buy fuel. I would assume that we're going to be continuing to see increases in our electricity bill.
Sure, Joanisabel. I think where the energy rate in terms of the recovery of fuel costs goes will ultimately depend on the market, right? So if the market is going up, then unfortunately that is one of the consequences of the system we currently have. So the adjustment clause will automatically have to be adjusted upwards for that, and likewise the reverse is the same, right? If it goes down, then the adjustment is a downward adjustment on the clause. In terms of I think in terms of what's not being collected, I think there's 2 important things to note. The first one is I think it's a temporary issue. If I understand what PREB is saying is there's a certain amount of monies, mostly related to the compensation or penalty, if you will, that natural gas suppliers pay to PREPA for when they supply diesel or another fuel instead of the natural gas. There's a process where PREPA has to request that payment from those suppliers. And what PREP is saying is, before I authorize you to recover that difference through rates, see if you can get that payment from the supplier. That way I don't have to have another incremental amount on the rates being put into on the burden of customers, right?
Exactly.
So, but at some point that will get reconciled. So it's not that they will not collect that amount ever, right? At some point, reconcile. The second thing I'll mention is, out of $3.4 billion, right, more or less, in fuel, the amount that's not getting reconciled is minimal. So it will really not impact the rate that much. It's really the majority of the fuel cost is getting passed on to customers through that adjustment clause. So I think where PREPA needs to look at is how can they just either move away from fossil fuels, renewables, or whatever other plan PREP wants to approve, and how they can be more efficient in reducing costs on their fuel contracts, right? So that's where PREPA really needs to look towards.
Okay, so, but still, I mean, the risk of new additional increases in fiscal year 2023, it's there. It's clear that at some point, PREPA will need to take that tremendous amount of expenditure from our pockets.
But I'll do say one thing. So the risk will always be there, right? So that's you're right. There's always a risk. The fiscal plan, though, has a projection on where, based on a lot of analysts that try to project fuel prices, which is impossible to project, but there is a perspective on where the fuel costs will go over time. So, the fiscal plan to some extent already projects that there's going to be a higher fuel cost this year than compared to others. So to some extent, that's already accounted for in the budget that's being approved. There may be variances. Again, if for some other reason the war in Ukraine escalates beyond its current situation, or there's other global factors that impact supply, that might lead to an incremental increase in the cost. But that's a risk that will always be there regardless of where the current price is.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Regarding PRASA, if I may.
Yes.
Okay. I understand that certainly this is the first budget that PRASA has been able to get approved without additional questions. I'm wondering, since the first fiscal plan and the requirement to increase rates on an annual basis, how much money PRASA has received precisely because of that requirement? How much money through the fiscal plan PRASA has been able to receive over the past 5 years? Because we customers are paying every single year a 2 to 4% increase. How much additional money would that be?
Yeah, I can get you the exact amount. It's over the last 5 years. It's I want to say about $300 million in incremental amounts. But
on an annual basis.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
On an annual basis?
No. On an annual basis, it's a much smaller amount. That's on the aggregate over the 5 fiscal years prior to the current fiscal year, and the current increase reflected as of July 1st. But I think part of why PRASA is in the position that it is, and it's restarting its capital improvement program. It has shifted the focus. And we try to make this point a lot. They've shifted focus from trying to solve their financial problems over to try to solve their operational deficiencies, and that's largely because those modest rate increases, which are in some cases are less than $1 a month for some customers, and the majority of customers, really allow PRASA the funds that they need to invest in maintenance, in renewal and replacement, the capital improvement program, to address some of the non-revenue water issues, to invest in new metering infrastructure. So, there is a direct link between PRASA's ability to invest in that system and the benefits that they get from those modest annual rate increases.
Thank you, Alejandra. Joanny.
Certainly,
we need to move to our question, Joanny. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
We have a question from John Marino. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Just quickly, there's a pending measure that would transfer $165 million from the state insurance fund to subsidize electric water rates. I'm wondering if the board has concerns about this, given that it's rejected previous proposals to, tap an emergency reserve for the same purpose.
I mean, Jaime, I don't know if you want to comment. I would say that since the measure we haven't received the measure, we would have to wait and see what is proposed, and we would review it at that point in time.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I believe we have already sent a letter regarding the bill as presented, but as Alejandro says, I don't think there's been I don't think it was enacted. Therefore, we would have to wait for that.
Okay, I just thought you generally review bills before their enactment, no?
Yeah, and as I said, I think we have, if my recollection is correct, I think we have sent some remarks on the proposed bill to the legislature.
Okay, I guess I'll request that letter then. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any more questions? ¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Silver, I just wanted to clarify on the McKinsey situation that I think I just want to make sure that we separate the two issues, because I think Oscar was asking about the McKinsey contract itself versus the contract review process. Just want to make sure that we separate those two issues as to the board's determination of the McKinsey contract and its renewal, and that's a completely separate, at this point, situation with respect to the contract review process and what McKinsey does there. So just want to make sure that my remarks are not misinterpreted in that regard.
Thank you for clarification. I was referring to both. And what I take it is that you will not be looking into the contract of McKinsey itself right now, but you will be looking into the contract review process to integrate maybe some other.
That's right.
Something that was not specified.
Exactly. We're looking at the contract review process. The McKinsey contract is a separate undertaking, Oscar, in that regard.
And you are not reviewing that one. Is what I think we all got.
Yeah, we are. That one is in place and will stay in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. Oscar.
Joanisabel, just to give you an exact figure on your question earlier, between fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2021, the rate adjustments generated $252 million in the aggregate.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Any other comments from the board members? Then we are finished this press conference. Acabamos esta conferencia de prensa. Gracias a todos. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you.